Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Currently, I'm the Vice President of Care System Excellence here for Dawn Health. And my primary role is overseeing the clinical development of our, um, our support to our clients and our users, as well as guiding our clinicians to provide the best care possible. I've been in the field for a little bit over 30 years, and I would say a good chunk of that time has been directly dedicated to supporting children, teens, and families. And that's been across the platforms of individual and family therapy, emergency medicine, foster care, residential treatment, and currently in the high school setting as well, where I practice and meet with students from freshman to senior year of high school and their families. So I'm excited to be here and share a little bit more about, what our ecosystem and our model of care looks like. And for those that are not familiar with us, please feel free to go out onto the web and take a look at dawnhealth.care. And there's further details there to explain our program and what we can offer to schools, families, and businesses and healthcare systems across the country. Yeah, great question, Gabby. I think first and foremost, it's an evolving task and commitment. It's never something that we're completely done with. So we have to change our approaches. We have to look at it from different lenses, from a newborn, infant, early childhood, adolescent, teen, young adult. So it's a rolling process. Attachment theory at its core highlights the elements of love, respect, and empathy. And being that we're all inherently connected, who doesn't like to be loved, who doesn't like to be respected and have empathy given to them? More specifically, when we dig deeper into attachment theory, there's elements of what's called, responsive parenting. And what that really highlights is the idea that that newborn, that adolescent, that teen, whatever their age group might be, that they recognize that their parent or guardian has an investment in them, not only to provide, but to assess their needs and then respond in a manner that offers congruence and safety and growth. So when I meet with clients and families, and especially my parents and guardians, I'm going into the spaces of what I call 5 key components of responsive parenting. We need to be emotionally available for our kids. And available means simply just modeling, discussing, and then active listening. And we'll get to that active listening part a little bit later here, because that can be somewhat difficult. The second component is consistent caregiving. Kids thrive on schedules. They thrive on workflow processes, the predictability, almost like a broken record. It's the family manual of operations. And quote unquote, this is how we do it. Healthy repetition of this builds safety and predictability once again, which then lowers tension, produces improved safety, which then give that child sort of a neutral, a positive platform to develop their emotional and mental wellness, as well as build resilience. The third part is positive reinforcement, as well as teaching to the non-desired behavior. We have to, as parents and guardians, be in that zone to be able to reinforce as well as redirect and teach. Everything is a teachable moment. So that's critical when we take a look at, trying to nurture that healthy attachment. It's our job to teach. As I mentioned a minute ago, active listening, that fourth piece, that's using, my dad always had that saying growing up was, you need to listen with your ears, not your mouth. And there's a lot of truth in that, and it takes a lot of effort for parents and guardians, including myself. I'm a father of 3, to really practice that actively, so that I'm present for my kids and that I'm giving them the space to share out, and definitely without judgment. Because being an adolescent teen, it's hard, and so is parenting, but there's also a lot of joy that comes with that. And then lastly, the fifth component is model quality time. You have to build an equity with your greatest investment, your family. So wake up and bedtime routines, shared meals, dedicated time for homework, family activities, downtime on an alone status, all of those pieces become critical to building equity in the structure of what that family represents when we're looking at developing secure attachments. And without those, that can become greatly compromised and it can lead to regressions. And, right here at Dawn Health, that's right in our wheelhouse. That's our core. We're looking to build capacity with both the individual, teen, adolescent, and then the parent guardian so that they can integrate these concepts into their daily functioning, and we can help them and we can help inflate that further. So once again, I strongly urge our audience to take a look at dawnhealth.care. We have tons of information out there that illustrate that model, but that's the value of secure attachment in my mind. Yeah, that's important, and I think this might be a unique lead-in to your question, but in order to learn how to emotionally regulate, we have to sometimes admit that we are dysregulated emotionally, and we have to recognize where have we been and where do we want to go, and those are two distinct different platforms or outcomes. So first, I think it's goes without saying we have to model. Our kids are sponges. They're watching, they're absorbing, and they're making deposits in their mental framework of what is optimal response or not optimal. And they don't necessarily know the difference at times between the two, but they're making those deposits. So first thing is modeling. Second, we always want to validate their emotions and feelings. Sometimes as a parent, we have that urge to snuff out the feeling. And then therefore what happens is then it makes us feel like we've solved the problem, where once again, we have to be active listeners and we have to validate those emotions. And that validating doesn't mean we agree. It just means that, we have a space to be present with them and listen. Thirdly, we have to coach and teach. We are our children's best coaches and role models. And we have to walk alongside them to nudge them in their own development with emotional regulation. And that means celebrating when they do well, but also hitting that pause button in a calm, reflective, supportive way as a parent or guardian to help understand, what did you mean by that? Or what were you trying to communicate? Or to me, that didn't seem like that's the way you handled it yesterday. What's different? And help that child or adolescent or teen be part of the explanation and the journey. And then lastly, open communication. What we don't say, out loud cannot be reinforced or supported. So I always recommend for parents and guardians, at least once a week, maybe Sunday nights, they have a little powwow, a check-in to really check on each other. How are we regulating? How are we expressing? How did it go last week? Because if there's something we could recognize that needs improvement from last week, that Sunday night is the perfect time for those elements to be tweaked or improved upon. And to our model again, once again at Dawn Health, we have highly trained clinicians who are eager and ready and willing to help nurture that and foster that and teach not only the adolescents or the teen, but also coach the parents. We deserve to be helped too, and that's specifically done on our platform through a different elements, such as we have a bi-weekly assessment tool that we launch out to every user and member, every parent and child, and that gives us direct feedback. And it's a really quick assessment tool, a touch point to help us understand what is the perception of the child, adolescent, teen, and then what are the parent groups seeing as well. We also have really, really valuable curriculum that also gets shared out to those users and those families, focusing on mental wellness, metabolic health. That's a big piece of what we do. We have nationally certified health and wellness coaches who are waiting and ready to be paired up with families, not just the child or the teen, but the parents as well, to help coach around the idea of mental wellness and health, and how does this all fit together for a better tomorrow for our families. Right. This is all stacking and layered on top of each other, all these values and these concepts you're bringing up. So thank you. I think, when we are looking at social skill development, we have to look at, the environment and the opportunity that one has. We have to look at the external factors. I've practiced in K-12 public education for, almost 25 years, 26 years. And, coming out of COVID, we saw great gains in some areas and we saw some struggles. And when we are isolated, we can't practice, or we can't fluently practice as much as we did before by being in the organic environment. So, there's other pieces that contribute to that. But I often really, really emphasize with parents, social skills is something that your child's learning. But keep in mind, some of the most valuable data that they're inputting into their brain is they're watching you. And they're watching how you handle that situation. And that's what they're going to remember, because that's how mom, dad, or guardian did that. So it's a two-pronged piece of how are we interacting with our own children, but then keep in mind they're watching every move, every syllable, every interaction as well. And all of that is really, really powerful. It has great impact. Or on the flip side, unfortunately, it has great ability to cause regression or entanglement where it can be confusing. And then I also illustrate to parents and guardians, we have to really customize how do we approach social skills and communication. What we do for a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old or maybe one of my 35-year-old clients, there's 3 different distinct expected patterns of communication. And we have to make sure that we're looking at that individual. So our families at Dawn Health, who have multiple children with us, we're well equipped, absolutely, to help nurture and grow skills around social competency with all of the kids in that system, in that family, whether they're, 8 years old or 9 years old, I should say, 13 or 18. We can come at it from a customized approach to provide what's best for each individual child that also cumulatively benefits the whole family system. The other piece too is, I always highlight oral language. It's not only what we say, but it's our body language. What are we physically showing our kids? What is our tone, our volume? All of that becomes part of the package deal. And then they're going to be more likely to replicate that if they find themselves in a similar situation. And then lastly, some people, hesitate to talk about conflict resolution. I love to normalize it as long as it's expected, healthy conflict. I like to embrace that and teach my adolescents and teens and my parent groups that this isn't something that we should run from. Let's gather around, because the power of a family unit and add a therapist or a health and wellness coach, that's pretty impactful. And we need to normalize that there are struggles and there are conflicts, because if we don't and we pretend that this shouldn't be here, like a parent-teen conflict that's low risk, then what we're doing is we're actually eliminating our abilities to positively navigate these waters. And then our child will replicate that for the next 5-6 decades. And we don't want to set that in motion. That's not healthy. Sure. Yeah. I'll start out by saying at baseline, parents and guardians, they juggle so much. I want to honor that. And, I think that's expected struggle. And I've never met a family system that is fully operational 100% on all cylinders, because we all have individual assets and struggles, and we do the best we can. So I want to honor our parents out there and our guardians. They're juggling not only parenting, but employment and any other roles that they have. But I often emphasize that, what is reflected in our home today will be our tomorrows for our children and adolescent and their future. So we want to be predictable with that. We want to honor that. So when we look at, cognitive development, a lot of research has been out there for many, many decades that healthy cognitive structuring comes from safety. when we don't feel threatened, we don't feel compromised, we don't feel harmed, we can let the organic development of our brain and the connectivity of everything that we need to make sense of our new external world, as well as ourselves, that the element of safety is really, really driving, that forward. So cognitive development, I will often have that discussion with parents about, how do you define nurturing in your home? What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does engagement look like and sound like? Tell me, is your home safe? What makes your home safe? The physical spaces. And it's not necessarily high-end decor. It's not accessorizing the space, but there's elements that children need to see, feel, and know that makes that space safe. Is it calm? When I walk into, a home or I walk into a classroom, I can see and feel calmness right away. And when things are calm and we have routines like we talked about before, this will allow the child to be stimulated in a way through their brain, through all their senses, where they can put together a reality of, what should my world look like? The absence of those traits obviously can build tension, confusion, or contribute to regressions in thought and actions down the road. And our whole model of wellness here at Dawn Health is all preventive based. So we can handle a lot of different situations, but what we pride ourselves on most is that we're looking to work with families before something becomes big. And if we can get with them early on, we can help unpack the tension or the confusion. Or if there's some regressions, we can help, right that ship by the power of all of us with our wellness model, focusing on metabolic health and mental health and wellness. So we welcome that. Additionally, I'll say that when we see cognitive development play out in a structured, healthy manner, we know that achievement goes up at school. We know that attendance improves because kids will go into those spaces that should be challenging, academically challenging. They'll go there now because they cognitively feel safe. They don't feel threatened. If they don't have that outside the school, or something's wrong in the school, that's going to compromise them in their cognitive development, and then they might have a maladaptive reaction. Sure. I think the thing that I often repeat the most throughout my day working with families is, helping people understand, what does it mean when I say taking healthy risks? I'm a father of three, and I want my children to challenge themselves. I want them to take healthy risks, not risks that will possibly cause them harm or regression, but to step outside of his own comforts and use their cognitive development, use the way we operate in our home, use our business structure as a family to leverage equity, to be able to go out there and try things, even when they know that there might be failure out on the landscape. And that's something that, taking healthy risks, I think, is part of the progress, of the journey of progress and growth. If our clients here, our families and our adolescents and teens at Dawn Health lean into our system, we are well positioned to be able to nurture these young minds, these cognitive developing minds, to really understand the value of routine, predictability, and how to really set the table to take healthy risks. And that could be someone trying out for a play at their local high school when they had no theater experience and maybe they have some spiking anxiety. Well, we can help them, nurture some coping strategies with that so that they can at least try. And trying is all that we're looking for in life. We want to try new things, never guaranteed that we're going to have an absolute win. It's the effort that gets us the win, and that builds that capacity and that strength. So once again, failure, that's another element that we try to normalize and we try to reframe as learning opportunities. And we should place all of our effort more so on, or our focus on the effort, not the outcome. When we work with our clients here at Dawn Health, our teens and our families, we're looking for implementation and effort. And if we can do that consistently, we feel confident in saying that the outcomes are going to be pretty solid. But it's not going to be an immediate result. It's going to be over time. And when we do things well and consistently over time and lean into healthy patterns of behavior and nurturance and healthy risks, usually good things can come of that. I think out of everything we're going to talk about here tonight, and for me, clinically, over the last 30 years, this might be probably one of the most crucial variables, the most important one. Clear, defined, age-appropriate boundaries equal safety. The other analogy I use with parents is, at a bowling alley, it's the rails that we sometimes will put up for our younger kids so there's no gutter balls. We want them to have to engage in the task. We want them to have to engage in the process. That doesn't mean there's going to be 100% outcome. That doesn't mean that they're going to win every time. But having boundaries for that child's development, that teen's development, that's going to be critical. So when we have that discussion with our clients and our adolescents and teens at Dawn Health, or I do, at my school, we're talking about boundaries that are safe. We always have to make sure safety is the overarching theme of everything else that we do, because without safety, we can't accomplish much anyways. So safety always wins. But then underneath that, the other elements of self-discipline. If we want to teach our youth the value of predictability, we want to model that, and we want to be able to have them experience that. Self-discipline is going to be at the core of that, and overlapping that is responsibility. So we want to teach that boundaries for our kids are embedded in safety, self-discipline, and responsibility, and we want to give them that opportunity to earn or experience that at a developmentally appropriate level. Because if we do that and we let them have a little bit more and they go out and then let's say they stumble, well, we're right there at Dawn Health. We're measurement-based care. We're looking at the data. We're looking at the parents' guardian report. We're looking at the adolescent teen self-reports. Our highly trained professionals from health and wellness and mental health, we're also bringing in observations and data, and we're ready to be responsive to that. And responsive could be something as simple of, that was great, that was a great effort on your behalf, and that sort of should have played out like that. So what did we learn from that? Our goal of being responsive isn't to prevent little tumbles or stumbles, but really nurture autonomy, because our kids really can't become independent if they haven't had success and failure and struggle. And if they can have autonomy and they can lean into our home system, that's also going to help shape their values, their morals, and then overlaying that would be solidify their resilience and the coping strategies. And that's also what we do. Everything that we offer families and teens and adolescents is all centered around that idea of resilience. Life can be hard. Let's admit that. Let's not hope it doesn't come. Let's be prepared for when it does come. And then even better, I think, with our families, when we partner with them over time and we have that healthy, incredible clinical relationship, we then start to move into the area of prevention. And that's when we can really, really know that we are in a really healthy zone. When our kids are equipped with everything we've talked about tonight and healthy boundaries, most importantly, that now they can make an active choice to go this way or that way. And if they go this way, they know that this is the healthy option. This is the most mental well choice I can make for myself. Because ultimately our kids will start making decisions without leaning into us, and we want to give them that power. Additionally, I often hear that teens tell me the impulsivity, it's hard. They're in the most largest growth spurt with hormonal development, social connectivity, academic. and they've got a lot going on. And the quote I often hear is, "quote, I feel, therefore I do." And that can work well for some situations, but at Dawn Health, what we are leveraging is guidance to build structure and predictability in their lives, knowing that, once again, the struggles are part of the journey, and that their responses are a pause, they're safe, and they have growth potential, and they're not reactionary in nature. So yeah, thanks for asking. Boundaries is probably one of the best things that I've experienced as a father. And it's hard though, because you have to be consistent as a parent, but we're here to walk with you at Dawn Health for all those parents and guardians out there to help you. Sure. I know we've spent a lot of time on, leading into that zone of resilience. How do we give our
Mhm.
kids the tools through their observations and our specific teaching and the health and wellness coaching and the mental health support that we can provide here at Dawn Health? That's paramount. We've talked a lot about that. I would say let's move into how do parents prioritize mental health in their home and create an environment where discussing mental health is normal and it's healthy. I came from, a generation. I know everything changes, but it was hard to really seek out help. Back in, dare I, say the years that would give you my age, but I'll just say, late '80s, early '90s. It wasn't really socially acceptable to publicly go and seek out or try to strategize how to discreetly do that. And then that became even less of a topic discussed in the homes back then. I think, coming out of COVID, one of the benefits, and it's a dual-edged sword, one of the benefits, though, is we all had to look at ourselves a little bit more forcibly, literally and metaphorically, in the mirror every day. And we had to face some things that maybe were easily swept aside by the busyness of our day, whatever our tasks and our roles were. But things became a little bit more real for a lot of people. And, I just left 15 years of emergency medicine practice about a year ago. And, we saw an uptick of about 30% as compared to pre-COVID, with adults and adolescent teens coming in to seek help. The only problem with that is those models of care, while valuable, they're not preventative, they're reactionary. And we would get these teens and these adolescents, and so much more work could have been done 6 months prior, or a year prior, or maybe 5 years prior. And that's what we pride ourselves on here at Dawn Health. We're proactive, and we're using data points instantaneously to drive decision making, to be able to be the best caregivers to that teen or adolescent in the family system. So, I often will encourage parents, model, lead by example, name their emotions. If they're meeting on Sunday nights, like I mentioned earlier tonight, call it out. Have a safe zone where people can say, hey, mom, dad, I saw you on Tuesday. You looked upset. It looked like you were, maybe your anxiety or your personal depression, or maybe you were frustrated. Having that narrative of open discussion is going to be number one priority, and then repeat it times 100 over and over, because what we repeat tells our kids it's important, it's probably healthy, and it's something that they're going to be more likely to do down the road when we're no longer caring for them. And then we can also not only focus on symptoms or deficits, so that's easy, but reframe the conversation in our homes around positive and doable actions that will lead to healthy outcomes. Normalize that life is sort of that roller coaster, and we don't want to live with the highs of highs and the lows of lows. That's probably going to be exhausting over time. But if we can get those waves to be a little bit more calmer and nurturing, and accept the struggle and talk about that, and flip it into a positive, doable action, that's going to prevent long-term regressive mental health alone. So, at Dawn Health, once again, we lift families up based upon where they're at. We honor their struggles, but then we empower them to collaborate with themselves and us as well as monthly parent conferences that we're having. I mentioned curriculum, and then we have our live telehealth sessions focusing around that mental health and the metabolic health and wellness. Sure. Yeah, you probably hit the number one spoken or unspoken question in most parents' heart and minds. Have I done enough? Did I do right? How much wrong did I do? And what is that going to predict for my child or my children? I think it's pretty obvious. Every parent has the dream to see their kid or their children evolve into a well-rounded young adult that has self-respect, has empathy for others in the world, and a sense of connectedness to both their internal and external worlds. But that's not easy, and there's not an exact recipe to pull that off. It's always a moving target. And if we go way, way, way back, the very, very first influence that the children have ever experienced is the first sense of touch in that delivery room. And that hand is safety, and with that comes a distinct smell, of that mother. And then also, what do people do when I cry in hunger or fear? They come and they rally around me, and then that ability eventually, after about a couple months, to be able to see and recognize and have that reciprocal engagement with their parents or those loved ones, siblings. And they know that those that love them are near. They know that they're safe, and that they're right where they need to be in that nurturing spot in their life. So it started way back then. It starts on that very, very first day. And that cycle repeats itself, albeit in different ways throughout early childhood, adolescent, the teens. We want to have these, our Dawn Health families, we want them to have these kids that grow up to be young adults and beyond that mirror all of these teachings and experiences, so that they're productive in their individual efforts and they belong to something bigger than themselves or their ego. Now, I realize there's always going to be exceptions to every rule, but in large part, if we provide our children with these skills to identify their emotions in a safe and healthy manner, build equity with healthy relationships outside of the family unit, and practice self-care and wellness, normalize struggles and conflicts, to me, that sounds like a really awesome recipe, for long-term contentment and prosperity. And when I say contentment, a lot of people run for joy, and I'm good with that. But I'd rather be content for most of my days, knowing that struggles are expected and rebounds are part of my game plan, and I have the skills to do that. Because joyful moments are awesome, but they're short-lived. They come and they go like that. And if we're holding on to that's not going to be fulfilling over the long haul. And what we might see is more impulsive behaviors. And when I say prosperity, I'm not talking money. I'm talking contentment in how I view myself, how the world accepts me, and what is that reciprocity in my environment, and always knowing I can go back to my family unit. So, that's exactly what we do at Dawn Health. We build for the future. We're not stuck entirely in the present tense. We want to honor the past. We want to help now, but we are really leveraging our system to build out so that everyone's tomorrows in our ecosystem and their futures are based on health and wellness. And to sum it up, I think our greatest accomplishments happen when we can walk here at Dawn Health. That is, we can walk alongside children, teens, and parents and guardians to help nurture that vision and that skill development, so that we get feedback not only through their self-reporting or parent guardian engagement, but our data tells us. Our data absolutely teaches us that the symptoms have reduced, the productivity and the engagement and the health and wellness is improved. That's our absolute goal, to be able to look at our clients and be able to speak that truth here at Dawn Health.